My fiancée secretly sent my dog to a shelter while I was at work. What I did next left her speechless. I'm Oliver, 31 years old, and I never thought I'd be writing something like this. But sometimes someone you love betrays you so completely that you need to share it with strangers just to process the sheer cruelty. This is about my ex-fiancée Vanessa, how she secretly sent my beloved dog to a shelter while I was at work, and what I did that left her absolutely speechless. Before I tell you about the betrayal, you need to understand what my dog meant to me. His name was Bear, a 3-year-old golden retriever mix I'd adopted as a puppy from a rescue organization. Bear wasn't just a pet. He was my best friend, my emotional support during the darkest period of my life, and honestly, the reason I'm probably still alive today. I adopted Bear 2 weeks after my father died suddenly of a heart attack. I was 28, living alone in a small apartment, working as a software developer and struggling with depression that had gotten significantly worse after losing the most important person in my life. My dad and I had been incredibly close. He was the one who taught me to code, who encouraged my career, who called every Sunday just to check in. After his funeral, I felt completely lost. I was barely getting out of bed, calling in sick to work more often than I should have, and seriously questioning whether life was worth living without him. That's when my sister Melody suggested I consider getting a dog. Dad always said dogs were the best judges of character. She reminded me. Maybe having something to take care of would help you take care of yourself. The day I met Bear at the rescue shelter, he was this gangly, energetic puppy who immediately jumped into my lap and started licking my face like he'd been waiting his whole life to meet me. The volunteer said he'd been returned twice by previous adopters who couldn't handle his energy level, but the moment I looked into his eyes, I knew he was meant to be mine. Bear saved my life in ways that are hard to explain to people who've never experienced that kind of bond with an animal. He forced me to establish routines, walking him every morning and evening, feeding him on schedule, playing with him when I got home from work. He gave me a reason to get out of bed when depression told me to stay under the covers. He was there for every panic attack, every sleepless night, every moment when grief threatened to overwhelm me. Over the 3 years we were together, Bear and I became inseparable. He came to work with me sometimes. My company was dog-friendly, and everyone in the office knew him. He slept in my bed, rode shotgun in my car, and had his own social media following because I posted photos of our adventures together constantly. Then I met Vanessa. Vanessa was beautiful, successful, and initially seemed charmed by my relationship with Bear. She worked in marketing for a luxury home goods company and had very specific ideas about lifestyle and image. When we started dating 8 months ago, she'd laugh at Bear's antics and post Instagram stories about dog mom life with him. But as our relationship got serious and she started spending more time at my apartment, I began noticing subtle signs of irritation with Bear's presence in our lives. "Does he have to sleep in the bed with us?" she'd ask. "It's not very romantic having a dog watching us. Do we always have to plan our weekend activities around Bear's schedule? It would be nice to have some spontaneous couple time. I love Bear, but don't you think it's a little excessive how much attention you give him? You talk to him more than you talk to me sometimes." I tried to accommodate her concerns while maintaining my bond with Bear. I bought him a nice bed for the bedroom floor instead of letting him sleep with us. I arranged doggy daycare for some of our date nights. I made conscious efforts to focus more attention on Vanessa when she was over, but it was never enough. The complaints escalated after we got engaged 3 months ago. Vanessa started talking about our future together in ways that made it clear she saw Bear as a temporary inconvenience rather than a permanent family member. "When we move in together, we should get a bigger place with a proper yard for Bear," she'd say, but then add, "or maybe it would be easier to find a nice family with kids who could give him more attention. I know you love Bear, but he's getting older and more set in his ways. It might be harder to train him to live with both of us full-time. Oliver, I need you to understand that marriage means prioritizing our relationship. Bear has been wonderful for helping you through your grief, but you don't need him the same way anymore. You have me now." The way she framed it made me feel selfish for wanting to keep my dog. Like I was choosing Bear over our relationship. Like I was being immature by not moving on from the coping mechanism that had gotten me through my darkest period. But Bear wasn't just a coping mechanism. He was family. He was the living connection to the version of myself that my father had been proud of. The daily reminder that I was capable of love and responsibility even when everything else felt hopeless. 2 weeks ago, Vanessa moved into my apartment temporarily while she looked for a bigger place for us to share. She said it would be a good trial run for living together, a chance to work out any compatibility issues before we made it permanent. I thought the biggest issue would be adjusting to sharing space. I had no idea she was planning something that would destroy not just our relationship, but my trust in people I love. Last Tuesday started like any other workday. I got up at 6:30 to Bear for his morning walk around the neighborhood while Vanessa was still sleeping, fed him breakfast, and gave him his usual goodbye pets before heading to the office. Bear was lying in his favorite spot by the window, tail wagging, completely content with his routine. "See you tonight, buddy," I told him, scratching behind his ears the way he loved. "Vanessa will probably take you out around lunch, okay?" Vanessa had been working from home more often since moving in, and she'd volunteered to help with Bear's midday walks and bathroom breaks. I thought it was sweet that she was making an effort to bond with him. I should have known something was wrong when I texted her around noon to ask how Bear was doing, and she responded with just, "Fine, he's fine." Usually, Vanessa would send photos or funny stories about Bear's behavior during the day. The brief response felt off, but I was busy with a project deadline and didn't think much about it. The first real sign of trouble came when I texted her at 4 p.m. saying I was leaving work early to take Bear to the dog park, and she responded immediately, "Don't come home yet. I'm handling some things. Maybe grab dinner out tonight?" That was definitely unusual. Vanessa knew I always came straight home after work to see Bear. She knew our evening routine was sacred to me: walk, dinner, playtime, then relaxing together on the couch. The suggestion to stay out felt completely out of character. "Is everything okay? Is Bear sick?" I texted back, "Everything's fine. Just need a few more hours to take care of some things. Trust me." But I didn't trust that response. Something in my gut told me to go home immediately. I walked into my apartment at 5:15 p.m. and immediately knew something was catastrophically wrong. The silence was the first clue. Bear always greeted me at the door with excited barking and jumping. The apartment was completely quiet. "Bear," I called out, expecting to hear the familiar sound of his collar jingling as he ran to me. Nothing. "Bear, where are you, buddy?" I searched every room of the apartment. The bathroom where he sometimes hid during thunderstorms. The bedroom where he'd sometimes nap on his bed. The kitchen where he'd wait hopefully for dropped food. Bear was nowhere to be found. But all of his things were gone too. His food in water bowls, his leash hanging by the door, his favorite toys scattered around the living room, his bed in the bedroom. Everything had been removed completely, like Bear had never existed. That's when I saw Vanessa sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, looking like she was trying to appear casual while doing something important. "Vanessa, where's Bear?" She looked up with an expression I'd never seen before, guilt mixed with defiance, like she knew what she'd done was wrong but was prepared to defend it. "Oliver, we need to talk. I made a decision today that I know you're going to be upset about, but I need you to hear me out before you react." My blood went cold. "Where's my dog?" "I took Bear to the Riverside Animal Shelter this morning. He's safe, he's being well cared for, and I couldn't hear anything else she said. The sound of my own heartbeat was so loud it drowned out her voice. Bear was at a shelter. My dog, my best friend, my family, the animal who'd saved my life, was sitting in a cage at a shelter, probably confused and scared, wondering why I hadn't come to get him. "You did what?" I managed to say when I could finally speak. "Oliver, please sit down. Let me explain why this was necessary." "Necessary? You took my dog to a shelter without telling me? How is that ever necessary?" Vanessa took a deep breath like she was about to deliver a rehearsed speech. "Oliver, I love you, but your relationship with Bear is unhealthy. You've become so dependent on him that you can't prioritize our relationship. We're supposed to be building a life together, but you treat the dog like he's more important than I am. He's my dog, Vanessa. He's family. You can't just decide to get rid of someone's family member. But that's exactly the problem. You think of him as family instead of recognizing him as a pet. We're about to be married, and you need to understand that I'm your family now. I should be your priority, not a dog you adopted during a difficult time in your life." The coldness in her voice was shocking. She was talking about Bear like he was an inconvenience that needed to be removed, not a living being who'd been part of my life for 3 years. "Vanessa, I need you to understand something very clearly. Bear is not negotiable. He's not a pet I can just replace or get rid of when it's convenient. I'm going to the shelter right now to bring him home. Oliver, the shelter closes at 6 p.m. It's too late today." I looked at my phone. It was 5:45 p.m. She timed this perfectly, knowing I wouldn't be able to retrieve Bear immediately. "Then I'll be there first thing tomorrow morning when they open." "Actually, you can't just take him back." I signed surrender paperwork stating that he was being given up voluntarily by his owner. "You'll have to go through their adoption process like anyone else, and there's no guarantee they'll approve you." The calculated cruelty of what she'd done hit me all at once. She hadn't just taken Bear to a shelter, she'd legally surrendered him in a way that would make it difficult or impossible for me to get him back quickly. "Vanessa, what you've done is beyond unforgivable. You've stolen my dog and lied to shelter staff about having the authority to surrender him. I didn't steal anything. I made a difficult decision that needed to be made for the good of our relationship. You'll thank me eventually when you realize how much better our life is together without the constant distraction of. I walked away from her mid-sentence. I couldn't listen to another word of her justification for the most heartless thing anyone had ever done to me. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat on my couch staring at the empty spot where Bear's bed used to be, planning exactly what I was going to do to fix this situation and make sure Vanessa understood the magnitude of her betrayal. I was at the Riverside Animal Shelter when they opened at 8 a.m. the next morning, having spent the entire night researching my legal options and preparing for what I knew would be a complicated situation. I brought every piece of documentation I could find proving my ownership of Bear, adoption papers, vet records, registration documents, photos, even screenshots of social media posts showing our relationship over 3 years. The intake coordinator, a woman named Jennifer, listened to my story with growing sympathy and concern. Sir, I remember the surrender from yesterday. A woman brought in a beautiful golden retriever mix, said she was surrendering him on behalf of her fiancé who couldn't handle the responsibility anymore due to work travel. My jaw clenched. Vanessa had lied to the shelter staff, creating a completely fictional narrative about why Bear was being surrendered. That's not true. I never authorized anyone to surrender my dog. I've been his owner for 3 years, and I have all the documentation to prove it. Jennifer reviewed my paperwork carefully. These documents clearly show you're the legal owner. The woman who brought him in claimed to have your authorization, but she didn't provide any written documentation supporting that claim. Can I see Bear? Is he okay? He's fine physically, but he's clearly stressed. He's been whining and refusing to eat since he arrived. Let me take you back to see him. Walking through the shelter kennels was heartbreaking. Dozens of dogs barking, looking for attention, hoping someone would choose them. But I only cared about finding Bear. When I saw him, my heart broke completely. He was lying in the corner of his kennel, looking smaller and more defeated than I'd ever seen him. His usual bright energy was gone, replaced by obvious depression and confusion. The moment he saw me, everything changed. Bear jumped up, tail wagging frantically, whining and pawing at the kennel door. He knew I'd come for him. Hey buddy, I said softly, reaching through the bars to pet him. I'm so sorry. I'm going to get you out of here right now. Jennifer was clearly moved by Bear's reaction to seeing me. There's no question this dog belongs with you, but I need to follow protocol because a surrender form was signed. Let me get my supervisor. The supervisor, a man named Mike, reviewed the situation and made a decision that restored some of my faith in humanity. Mr. Oliver, it's clear that the surrender was made without proper authorization. The woman who brought Bear in may have committed fraud by misrepresenting her authority to surrender someone else's animal. We're going to return Bear to you immediately and file a report about the false surrender. 20 minutes later, Bear was back in my car, practically glued to my side, seeming to understand that he was safe and going home. I sat in the shelter parking lot for a few minutes, just holding him and processing the relief of having him back. But I wasn't done dealing with Vanessa. I drove straight to my apartment, knowing she'd be there and that we needed to have a conversation that would end our relationship permanently. What I didn't expect was to find her packing her belongings like nothing had happened. Oh good, you got Bear back, she said casually when I walked in with him. I was hoping they'd approve your adoption application quickly. The audacity was breathtaking. She was acting like this had been a minor inconvenience rather than a devastating betrayal. Vanessa, we need to talk about what you did yesterday. Oliver, I know you're upset, but I really think if you'd just given it a few days, you would have realized how much better life could be without the constant responsibility of... Stop. Just stop talking. Something in my voice made her pause her packing and look at me directly. What you did yesterday wasn't just wrong, it was criminal. You committed fraud by falsely representing your authority to surrender my dog. You lied to shelter staff and created a false narrative about my wishes and capabilities as a pet owner. Her casual demeanor started to crack. Oliver, you're being dramatic. It's not criminality. Actually, it is. I spoke with the shelter supervisor this morning, and they're filing a report about your fraudulent surrender. Misrepresenting your authority to dispose of someone else's property is a crime. That got her attention. The color drained from her face as she realized I wasn't just going to accept what she'd done and move on. But more than that, I continued. What you did shows me exactly who you are as a person. You're someone who's willing to cause suffering to an innocent animal to get what you want. You're someone who's willing to lie and manipulate to control other people's lives. You're someone who sees living beings as disposable when they become inconvenient. Oliver, please. I made a mistake, but I did it because I love you. I want us to have a future together without distractions. A future built on the betrayal of someone who trusts you isn't a future worth having. And Bear isn't a distraction, he's family. The fact that you can't understand that tells me everything I need to know about your capacity for love and loyalty. I walked over to my desk and pulled out something I'd prepared the night before, the engagement ring she'd given back to me when she'd moved in temporarily. Vanessa, our engagement is over. I need you to pack your things and leave my apartment today. You're ending our relationship over a dog? I'm ending our relationship because you showed me that you're capable of heartless cruelty toward the beings I love most. If you can do this to Bear, what would you do to our future children if they became inconvenient? What would you do to me if I ever became a burden? That's when I revealed what I'd planned, something that would ensure she understood the full consequences of her actions and never had the opportunity to hurt another animal this way again. While Vanessa finished packing her belongings in stunned silence, I sat on the couch with Bear, who hadn't left my side since we'd returned from the shelter. He was still anxious, checking every few minutes to make sure I was still there, clearly traumatized by the experience of abandonment and not yet convinced it wouldn't happen again. Vanessa, I said as she loaded the last of her boxes by the door, there's something else we need to discuss before you leave. She looked at me with a mixture of hope and apprehension, probably thinking I was going to offer some possibility of reconciliation. I've spent the last 18 hours thinking about what you did, and I've realized something important. This wasn't an impulsive decision made in a moment of frustration. This was calculated, planned, and executed while I was at work specifically so you could present me with a fait accompli. Her face confirmed what I suspected. This had been premeditated. You researched shelter policies, timed the surrender to make immediate retrieval impossible, and created a false narrative to shelter staff about having authorization to surrender my dog. That level of planning shows this wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate cruelty. Oliver, please, I know it seems bad, but it doesn't seem bad, Vanessa. It is bad, and I've decided that the consequences need to match the severity of what you did. I pulled out a folder I prepared containing screenshots, printed emails, and documentation of everything that had happened. First, I've reported the fraudulent surrender to animal control authorities, providing them with evidence that you misrepresented your relationship to Bear and your authority to make decisions about his welfare. They take animal welfare fraud seriously. Her eyes widened. Oliver, you can't be serious. It's not that big a deal. Second, I've contacted your employer's human resources department. That got her complete attention. Vanessa worked for a luxury home goods company that marketed itself heavily around family values and ethical treatment of all living beings. Their social media was full of posts about corporate responsibility, compassion, and integrity. I sent them a detailed account of what you did, including the fraudulent misrepresentation to shelter staff and the emotional trauma you caused to both Bear and me. I included the shelter's incident report and documentation of your deception. You contacted my job? Oliver, that's completely unfair. This was a personal matter. Was it? Because you made this about character and values when you decided that your convenience was more important than animal welfare. Your company markets itself as ethical and compassionate. Don't you think they deserve to know that one of their marketing executives is capable of abandoning someone else's pet at a shelter based on lies? I could see her processing the potential career implications. Her company took its ethical image seriously, and having an employee exposed for animal welfare fraud would be a significant concern. Third, I continued, I've shared the entire story on social media, including screenshots of your text messages about Bear being an inconvenience, and your admission that you timed the surrender to prevent me from retrieving him immediately. Vanessa had a significant social media presence that she used to promote both her personal brand and her company's products. She regularly posted about lifestyle, relationship goals, and personal values. The contrast between her online persona and her actual behavior would be stark and damaging. But the most important thing I've done, I said, standing up with Bear still pressed against my side, is ensure that you never have the opportunity to do this to anyone else. I handed her a final document from the folder. This is a restraining order petition. I'm requesting legal protection not just for myself, but for Bear. If you ever come near my apartment, my workplace, or attempt to contact me or interfere with my pet ownership again, you'll face criminal charges. Oliver, this is insane. You're destroying my life over a dog. No, Vanessa. You destroyed your own life when you chose to handle our relationship conflicts by abandoning my dog at a shelter. You destroyed your own reputation when you decided to lie to shelter staff to accomplish your goal. You destroyed your own future when you prioritized control over compassion. I walked to the door and opened it, making it clear that our conversation was over. But here's what I want you to understand as you leave. Bear didn't just save my life when I adopted him. He revealed my capacity for unconditional love, loyalty, and commitment. The way someone treats animals shows their true character, and what you did shows me exactly who you are. You're choosing a dog over the woman you were going to marry. I'm choosing loyalty over betrayal. I'm choosing compassion over cruelty. I'm choosing someone who's never lied to me over someone who spent yesterday lying to everyone she encountered. That choice is easy. As Vanessa left my apartment for the last time, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for the relationship I thought we had. Relief that Bear and I were safe from someone who'd proven capable of such calculated cruelty. The consequences for Vanessa unfolded over the following weeks exactly as I'd planned. Her company conducted an internal investigation after receiving my complaint and ultimately decided that her actions reflected poorly on their corporate values. She wasn't fired, but she was reassigned to a position with significantly less responsibility and public visibility. The social media exposure was more immediate and brutal. Friends and colleagues who'd followed her lifestyle content were shocked by the disconnect between her online persona and her actual behavior. The story was shared widely, with many people expressing disgust at her treatment of an innocent animal. Most importantly, the restraining order was approved, providing legal protection for both Bear and me against any future interference. 6 months later, Bear has fully recovered from his trauma and is back to his normal, happy self. We've developed an even closer bond, if that's possible, and I've started volunteering at the same shelter where he was briefly held, helping other animals find homes with people who understand that pets are family members, not disposable conveniences. I've also started dating someone new, a veterinary technician named Sophia who understands that Bear is a package deal and loves him almost as much as I do. She was there during his recovery from the shelter trauma and has shown me what it looks like when someone genuinely cares about animal welfare rather than just tolerating pets for appearance's sake. Sometimes the most important relationships in your life aren't romantic. They're the ones built on unconditional loyalty, daily presence, and love that doesn't depend on convenience or circumstances. Bear taught me that, and Vanessa's betrayal only confirmed it. The right person will love what you love. The wrong person will try to take it away.